The recent job I've been doing now has been in a kindergarten. I like kids a lot, and the working days consists of all the normal things you are supposed to do with small children. But in a way, specifically daycare demonstrates the problems we have in our modern societies. In any given day, I talk to the kids, play board games with them, take them to the park, and keep an eye on them when they sleep during the nap time. All the things that are actually nice and fun when people picture family life in their minds, I get to do. However, the kids actually are in a pretty weird spot. Since they are so small, they require adult supervision and company all the time. And most of all, they require the presence of their own parents, but none are available since all the adults are working. This creates a huge crisis for the child, and when the kindergarten starts, it is a big blow to be separated from your mother and father. Once the first shock subsides, the need doesn't go anywhere. Since their own parents aren't available, they will start treating the worker, me, with the same affection as they would their own parent. It is kind of peculiar to go be someone's dad for 8 hours each day, and you quickly get attached to the children. The worker gets the best hours of every child's day, since they aren't tired and cranky yet, and the kids beam with satisfaction once they get the attention of an adult. But the thing is, I get to do these things, not the actual parents of the children. The parents are at work. Once the day shift is done and people can pick up their kids from daycare, they have to do all the chores people have to do, and after that and all the commuting, they probably get an hour or two a day to spend time with their own kids. And by the evening, everyone is tired and the children have to be put to bed soon anyway. People do get the weekends, sure, but it is not anywhere close to the 40 hours a week I get to spend with the same kid. And who am I to the parent? Nobody. The daycare workers are strangers whose services you just happen to need. But we are of no relation, there is no friendship, we are not even neighbors. If we would live in some sort of an old school village situation, where the village would genuinely be a community and all of us really would need to help each other in order to live our lives. Someone would be the baker, some farmers, one guy builds all the stuff we need, and so on. It would be different, since then we would have a genuine tribe, but in a modern city there is absolutely nothing here. But the kid needs the affection. He or she needs to know that the adults around are trustworthy and they take care of you and they pay attention. But these bonds cannot be forged because the way our societies work. The daycare workers change all the time, and once the kids become older, they are changed to a different group, with different kids and different workers. The change is sudden and in a way constant, as there is always some shuffling about. The end result is that the child tries to constantly bond with the people around him or her, but this is constantly denied, and they don't get to have enough time with their primary caretakers, the parents. There have been sad cases where the parental bond has been severely lacking, as for one reason or another the parents are distant and cold towards their own kids, so the child tries even harder to get what he needs from the daycare workers. Once they become too old and are put to the next group, they try to hang around the old room they were in as much as possible, but now they are outsiders to that too. On top of this, the atmosphere in a kindergarten just is by its basic configuration too stressful for the kids. Adults and kids come and go, there is noise and shuffling about, and the basic state for the kids is a high-strung one, as they can't just get to the more calm baseline they would need. The end result is peculiar. No one gets what they would need emotionally. Neither the kids, their parents, nor us workers, as we get attached to the children too. There is just constant activity in the air all the time, but the focus of it all is in every which direction. For the parents, a lot of the evenings is spent of taking kids to their hobbies, whether it is piano practice or soccer, so even more of the time just goes to being a chauffeur. When people truly desire a family life, I wonder if some of them are surprised when they realize where all the time is actually going. You have a family, but do you really even get to have one? All the time and effort just goes to holding up the framework for all the things they need. But the actual time you spend with the said family can end up being very minimal. Even as we are together, in reality we are all very separated. As I've gotten older and met people who have trauma or other baggage, a lot of them have had decent childhoods in all the material ways. they've got food, clean clothes, and so on. But at the end of the day, they just weren't hugged enough. There is a certain coldness or some other weirdness between them and their parents. Or maybe the parents really truly tried, but life just got in the way. And all this leaves a mark. Many have to wrestle with this mark for the rest of their lives. I keep wondering if the widespread depression and anxiety so many people feel now is just tied to the fact that the basic configuration of our society denies the emotional core, or at least impedes its creation. On paper, we have so much stuff that the previous generations didn't have. Access to technology, modern medicine, consumer goods, and so on. But then we just feel bad and all the things we have don't help at all, even though we can be eternally grateful that we live in a world where antibiotics are available. Sigmund Freud lived through the time period of great innovation in the late 1800s, when, for example, electricity and steam engines were developed, and he himself contributed with his psychoanalysis. But he did wonder in one of his writings if all these innovations really would make us any happier. It is enlightening to read about the criticisms of industrialization and of people moving to cities in the late 1800s and early 1900s. As all issues they are talking about are the same things we face and suffer from today. We have just lived in the modern society long enough that it has become normal for us and we cannot imagine things being otherwise. Whether we realize it or not, the effects of this disconnect are brewing under the surface, causing their damage. Marx is a controversial figure, but a lot about his diagnosis on capitalism was spot on. One of these factors is about the alienation it causes. Let's say, for example, that I am inviting you to my apartment for dinner. I work really hard to create a tasty meal and welcome you warmly into my home. After the meal, you give me $200. Even though this amount would exceed all the effort and the price of the ingredients I bought many times over, I would feel extremely insulted. What are you doing? Can't I invite you over and give you food I made simply because I enjoy your company and appreciate you being here? What is all this that is now happening between us? In an ideal situation, you treat someone well and they treat you well back in exchange, and a warm bond forms between us. And with love, you want to treat someone well simply because you love them. Capitalism alienates us from each other. That was one part of Marx's criticism. And with my experience with the job in the daycare, it's hard to argue against this specific point. A lot of the time, the incentives inside the system create very weird behavior. When I was in college to get my social studies BA, the whole thing was a joke. The universities took anyone and everyone to study, since the government wants people to get educated and the unis get funding partly from the amount of people who graduate. So in my classes there were a lot of people who could never ever be employed in any sort of a job due to various reasons. Some could barely read or write, and when you talked to them there was a several-second delay before they could answer anything, as it took so long to process any information. If you picture Patrick Star from SpongeBob in your head, but even dumber, you are on the right track. Others had serious mental health problems and trauma, and now they were pursuing to work in mental health work themselves. The things that were discussed and what they would see at work constantly triggered their conditions, and it was clear that they were not in a good enough shape to hold down any sort of a job. The uni's answer was to pass everyone through everything. One book exam was an oral one, and we did it as a group, which was very weird, and the only question that was asked of us was what we thought about the book we had been told to read. I just said that it was shit, and didn't elaborate any further, as I was so pissed off. And the teacher passed me with the second highest grade. I didn't even know the title of the book. The courses couldn't hold any semblance of information, as you couldn't require anything out of anyone. So we just sat there and chatted, and we were given meaningless busywork. The courses were designed to take 7 weeks, but all the things you were required to do took about 15 minutes. The rest of the time you just waited and did weird busywork. I can understand scamming, since, like the famous saying goes, there's a sucker born every minute. But what was truly bizarre was the fact that the teachers were true believers of what they did. They couldn't have been radiating more motivation to work. and not in a way that they knew that they had a good thing going with the juicy scam and wanted to milk it, but in a way that everything that they were doing was gospel and holy. They generated endless amounts of weird and meaningless busy work for themselves, since there wasn't anything actually teaching related to do, so they couldn't even put their feet on the desk and take it easy. The whole college experience for me was absurd and reminded me heavily of a cult of some sort. I've had hard time explaining it to others who didn't know what I was doing in school. Same things seem to happen even in higher education. I've read 3 PhD thesis papers, and all of them were absolutely abysmal. I would think that anyone would have been able to make them, whatever their background and area of interest or expertise, as a mediocre video essay or a Wikipedia article has more effort and talent put into it than any of these theses. One of them was on history, the second on sociology, the third one was on food sciences, and ironically the most hard science one was of the worst quality. So you can't even say that in humanities and soft sciences you can do just whatever anyway. The universities have incentives to pass everyone here too, despite the quality of the work. I live in Finland and my country has really good reputation regarding education. Someone somewhere must be doing good work, but whatever title or degree you have really doesn't mean anything if the standards and content of education are like this. There was a wonderful old TV series from BBC called Yes Minister and its continuation series Yes Prime Minister. In one of the early episodes there was a hospital that had no patients, but the place was still kept open. Minister is flabbergasted over this, but other government officials insist that the staff is wholly occupied over all the administrative tasks. Hospital must produce results, the minister says. Minister, we do not measure our success by results but with activity, answers his secretary. This is often so deeply true. The system just needs us to look busy, and a single worker easily finds himself as a part of a perpetual motion machine, without his work really producing anything. As we are lost with the emotional ties the system provides us, and with the work that consumes most our waking hours, the backdrop of the human world, the ideology, is missing too. Religion does not play the same part as it previously did in history, and so we feel a lack in our world, regardless of whatever else we may think about religion itself. In a believer's world, the faithful have their place. There's a creation myth that started the whole of existence. There is a guide of how we should be and what we should do, and life after death is sorted out too. There are supernatural beings who have their own place, be it good or bad, and you can situate yourself once you know where the other beings lay. If you remember the old sea charts in history, maps that had plenty of spots that were unknown, they still had plenty of stories attached to those areas. Monsters of all shapes and sizes lived there, and their pictures were drawn to these maps. Mythology of spirits and wisps filled the canvas of the world, and man was not alone. Now man is truly alone. You only have the depersonal natural laws and quantum physics that human mind can barely understand. The horror mythos of H.P. Lovecraft's stories reflected this vast and cold cosmos, an universe that owed nothing to man and didn't care whether he existed or not, while still possessing the power to wipe us all out just like that, without even paying attention. Against the void, we are told to buy things and consume, as we now have access to all sorts of goods, gadgets and products. But despite their usefulness and the pleasure they provide us, we don't get a peace of mind. Human beings were originally meant to function in relatively small groups, as hunter-gatherers. Our intellect evolved on top of this basis of our being, and it took us to weird directions. Some historians theorize that civilization itself was an accident. Once some people figured out agriculture, and they could stay in one place and provide a food surplus, they were stuck. Despite the calories farming provided, grains and crops didn't provide all the nutrients people needed, and the work for farming proved to be backbreaking, but there was nowhere else to go anymore. Those who stayed as hunter-gatherers were bigger, stronger and healthier than their farming counterparts, so the fossils tell us, and anthropologists say that the hunter-gatherers worked just about 4 hours a day. The tribe moved about and they spent time with each other. telling stories about the stars on the night sky, while the farmers died early and crumbled under the backbreaking labor. The food surplus allowed others to specialize and new arts and technologies were created, and the elites could create armies and crown themselves kings. According to this view, we were never supposed to live like this straight from the very beginning, and our psyches mesh against the basis of civilization. I don't want to romanticize the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, as anyone who has watched nature documentaries knows that any animal's life can be cruel and violent. And I don't want to praise the framework that ideology or religion can give us too much either, as those create their own problems. Napoleon mused on society and religion in this way, quote, "In religion I do not see the mystery of incarnation, but the mystery of the social order. It associates with heaven an idea of equality. It keeps rich men from being massacred by the poor. Society is impossible without inequality. Inequality intolerable without a code of morality, and a code of morality unacceptable without religion." End quote. So, for now, we are left to ponder at our situation, diagnosing the problem this way or that. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.